Friends, family, collectors, happy new comic book day, one and all. Well, not for me, because this is recording on June 2nd, but you guys will be seeing it the following Wednesday. So happy new comic book day to everybody out there. I'm TM Nerdy. This is Chatting with the Comic Community, episode 75. And my guest today is somebody I feel like knows everybody in the comic industry, and not only knows them, but talks about them like they're best friends. This guy is an amazing community member. We're going to talk a little bit about him, about how he got into comic collecting, his art. He collects art. I want to definitely talk to him a little bit about that. I definitely want to talk to him about New Warriors and what he likes about New Warriors and why, because he seems like to be the only one out there that likes New Warriors. And then we'll probably touch on The Flash, because he had an early screening of The Flash. That's right, guys, early screening of The Flash. No spoilers, but I just want to get his thoughts and feelings about that. So my guest today is Beckermin. Let's bring him out.
Hi.
Beckermin. How are you today, man?
Oh, doing good, man. Doing good.
That's great. So for the viewers at home that don't know a lot about you, give a little bit of rundown of who you are.
All right. So TM Nerdy said I like the New Warriors. That's because I don't like change. So when I started reading comic books, it wasn't the first book I ever read, but the first book that made me really want to try to get every issue of something and continue to collect it was New Warriors #1. I bought it off a news rack. By 1991, by the end of 1991, I would have a pull list that I've kept going with one shop or another or online in the for about 15 to 20 years. I was online buying because my town didn't have a shop. But yeah, so from 1991 to whatever year it is now, I've had a pull list. Other than that, I collect art and I like to go to comic book conventions.
So when did you start? You gave us a little bit of rundown of the New Warriors, and you don't like change. But when was it? What year was it? Did you just continue collecting ever since that New Warriors were out?
Yep.
And how has your comic collection progressed throughout the years?
Okay, so my first, let's see if we can put it together. I remember when I started my pull list, I had 7 titles because that's exactly what I could afford in a month. I had New Warriors, X-Force, Thor, Hulk. I was reading Hulk before I was reading New Warriors. The first comic I ever got was Avengers Spotlight #21. That was my first issue. I was heavy Marvel then, all Marvel. I don't think I had any DC. I bought a few. My mom bought me a few random Superman issues. By high school, I developed a really snobby attitude about Superman. I thought he was overpowered. I was a big make mine Marvel. I was a Marvel zombie. I didn't really find outside of Marvel until probably around 1998. Heroes Reborn was terrible. I didn't like it. I didn't like killing everybody off with Onslaught. So that kind of led me into Batman, which is where I read No Man's Land. And then I got really into Batman. 2000, I was into the Kevin Smith movies. We were talking about this just a few minutes ago. I got really into Oni Press and the indies. Deep Fried Comics was a big, I haunted their message boards. And I had my first computer, so I got really into the internet. The old CBR forums were lit. I mean, literally, my Friday nights would be get some junk food in my first apartment, get a bunch of sugary beverages, read comic books, and then go to the CBR forums and meet like-minded individuals, kind of like we do now with YouTube, but it was on forums back then. And that's where you met a lot of writers and stuff. Like, it wasn't just the readers that were on there. Peter David was very active on the forums. He had his own thread that kind of worked as a soapbox. Anyway,
is that how you got, like, because you're known to like know a lot of writers, a lot of artists in the industry, and a lot of editors now too?
Honestly, it would be art collecting, because you reach out to people. You try to complete your collection. For me, if you're reading and collecting comic books, you might not necessarily even care who's writing or writing or doing the art on the book. I mean, anymore with the price point, you probably do because you're worried about the quality. But back then, it wasn't uncommon for me in the 90s, especially. I had no clue who made the comics I read. But 2001, I went to my first comic book convention. And I got my first sketch. I didn't even know this was a thing, my world would expand multiple times throughout comic books, and I would keep finding new things I loved in it. And to me, that was going to a con. I doubled down. Like, I got even more, and I immediately started looking for where the next one I could go to was. I was hooked. I was waiting for my friends. We didn't have cell phones back then, TM. I don't know how much older than you I am, but I had a prearranged time.
I did live in an era with no cell phones. We had like this core phones, so I'm not that young.
Okay, well, I'm 43, and in 2001, I think I was 21, 22. Anyway, I was waiting at this con for my friends. And we were supposed to meet back up and then walk back to our hotel together and possibly find pizza on the way. And I look over and there's a guy just drawing for people, like he's just got his gear set up and he's just busting out some quick sketches. This was kind of the waiting area where people waited for people. And I was like, oh, that guy looks kind of familiar. And they're like, yeah, that's Jim Lee. I was like, well, damn, like, what do I do? I don't have one of those notebooks you guys are carrying around. It's like, well, somebody told me if you have a comic book backing board, he can do it on there. So I waited. He finished up with the person he was drawing for. And I think there was one more person, and then it was me, and my friends were still not there. So I was like, oh, can I get something? He's like, well, what would you like? Wonder Woman I went with. And he drew this gorgeous bust of Wonder Woman. It was awesome in pencil, and it was free. I even said, I was like, this doesn't cost me. He's like, no, man. Like, I'm hanging out. We talked about his run on X-Men and how I had the poster for X-Men 2, the promo posters they would put out. X-Men issue 2's cover was a promo poster that had an ad at the bottom for some book Chris Claremont had wrote, and we talked about that, and that was it. He busted it out real quick, and it was amazing. Why
Wonder Woman?
I froze, TM. I froze. Plain and simple. If I had it to do over and I knew he was going to knock it out of the park like he did, I would have asked for something else, but I think I had heard somebody say one, at that time, I would lock up in those situations. And I kind of, I guess it was sort of like that scene from A Christmas Story where the kid can't remember he wants a BB gun to Santa Claus. Like, I just, Wonder Woman would be cool. So yeah,
nothing against Wonder Woman, but it's just
not a character I even like or have ever read. I was just nervous, and that's how that first few cons, like, I got starstruck a lot and got into adventures with my friends. I always think it's funny, like, some of the hotels, especially my buddies Jerry and Joe, they they basically rewrote the lobby party policies in some of those Chicago area hotels because of their antics. And we just had great times. And, you know, me, who was it? Chuck Dixon. Are you familiar with Chuck Dixon? Wrote like a lot of the Robin.
Yeah. Like the Robin in the 90s, right?
Yep. So he wrote Robin in the 90s and Nightwing. He basically had all of the sidekick books. Well, Chuck Dixon was my favorite writer at that time, and I loved that run of Robin. So my first con, oh, what a freaking knucklehead I was. I think I brought 60 issues of Robin with me to get signed at a free signing. Super cringy behavior out of young Mike. I didn't think, like, I just was like, I want them all. Like, oh, what issues did you select? All of them. Oh, gosh. He was really patient with me.
I'd say, like, how many issues was that? Rough estimate.
No, 60. Like, I brought like 60 comic
60?
books. Yeah, like 60 comic books. I would have brought more, but I was having a hard time controlling those.
Yeah,
I don't even think I had gear. Like, I didn't have a pulley or anything. Like, I'm just running around like this. Like, it was very ill prepared, and yeah, I was a wild man back then. What an idiot!
Yeah, I'd say he was pretty patient with you, considering that you brought 60 issues and he sat there signing every single one of them for free.
He did, and I didn't have any of them prepped or out of bags or anything. Ugh. Like, I even hate telling that story. I feel terrible.
You told him.
Chuck,
you
if you're
just brought
out
it
there,
up. I didn't even have to ask it.
I'm sorry, Chuck.
Has he done anything recently?
No, I think he went and got himself canceled. I know he's a big part of Comicsgate now, so I think I don't think he works for any of the mainstream companies anymore.
Oh, okay. So when was it like that you wanted to transition to art, like, and get the art? That's where you met a lot of the people, a lot of the artists out there and stuff. When was it, like, after Jim Lee, were you just like, you know, I'm gonna switch? Like, have you been still getting comics, or are you just like mostly
still getting comics the whole time? And at that time, I was still actively hunting. You know, every con I went to, I had my notebook, I had my want list. I'm running comic books down. But now I'm also paying attention. So, like, the next con I went to, I think I had it in my head I wanted to get something from Mike Grell. I think I got a Warlord. But now you start seeing, and when you're commissioning art, you're talking more to people. And back then, it was really before the rise of the art. I mean, the art reps were there back then, but not everybody had them. You know what I mean? So, like, when you're setting up a commission, now you're forced to have a conversation. When you're going through a signing line at a con, like at Marvel's booth or DC's booth or what have you, because, you know, the cons I was going to, the companies were setting up at, and so my first con, I guess I should say, was Wizard World, and this is before they had a tour. This is before they blew up and got too big too quick. This is when they only had a Chicago show, and then after that year I went, I think they started doing Philly shortly after. But Wizard World Chicago, they would actually hand out the awards for Wizard Magazine for that year, for like best comic, best creating duo, best this, best that. And that first one I went to, that also kind of got me really into panels, because I go to that and Kevin Smith was hosting. I was like, oh, this is, you know, I'm a huge Jay and Silent Bob fan. Like, oh my God, like that Kevin Smith is here. And like, I'm sitting sixth row on the aisle, you know, like he's making jokes, you know, he looks over at us and goes, yeah, these guys know what I'm talking about, when we yelled at one point about beer or something. it was just fun. Like, I was like, this is so great. So yeah, that was something I think that art collecting did for me, is it boosted the interaction level. Because when you go to a signing, you know, they're signing their name and you're done. But when you're ordering commission convention sketches or whatever, you know, you get to talk to them, and whatever your idea is will prompt conversation too, and you get to know people, and you get to meet other collectors, meet artists, commission where I remember vividly, in fact, that first, maybe my second con, I met Robert Kirkman when he was selling his book in Artist Alley. What in the heck was it called? Battle Pope?
Battle Pope. It
Yeah.
showed up in Mallrats. No, it showed up in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, didn't it?
I think you're thinking of Madman, but maybe.
I thought Battle Pope showed up in Brody's shop.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with those later movies. Like, once you get out of Dogma, I am not as up on my Kevin Smith knowledge as I should be. But yeah, it was great. Got to talk to him, got to meet some of the sub members of his crew. Who else would I met around that time? I know that's the first time I saw Scotty Young's work. He was doing like graffiti on skateboards. And I think that might have been his first con. I think 01 or 02 was his first con. And he, you know, a lot of those guys got their start. I remember, it wasn't at that one, but an early one. I remember meeting a really young Tyler Kirkham, because that was the thing. I just hung out in the Artist Alley in between panels. Like, I would have the panels I'm going to, the signings I'm going to, and other than that, catch me in Artist Alley, because that's where it was happening for me. You had all these people who were so excited to pitch their books to you, and I fell in love with indie comics. As we were talking, like, I really liked the indie scene at that point, because everybody was so much more passionate. You know, these guys don't have contracts. They don't have deals. They don't have distribution. They've got to sell you on it. And I love that interaction level. And then you talk about
passion for their art.
Yeah, because they have to, because an unpassionate salesman isn't going to sell anything. You know what I mean? You got to believe in your project to get out there and convince me that I'm going to spend my money on it. And I still have just loads of books I picked up from that time.
Now, I know that a lot of artists like Kyle Strom, I know Rob Liefeld are taking to Whatnot and doing auctions on there. What do you think about those? Do you think the interaction, because like they do interact with you and you get to see them sign the product that you purchase and stuff. Do you like this new coming of age?
I do. That's kind of how I've gotten to know Kyle Strom better. Now, I met him through a mutual friend here in Kansas City, a ghoul named Mr. Macabre, who's a local personality and a friend of mine. We went to a movie and I met Kyle after the movie. Him and his wife were sitting in front of us, but where I really got to know more about him and his art was his Whatnot stream. And yeah, I thought I like it. Obviously, we've got a big con coming up with Heroes, but as I get older, I don't really want to travel across the country anymore. My days of going to San Diego are over. I ain't doing that anymore. It's post-COVID, you know. Everybody was looking for a way to be able to still make their money off doing like con style interactions, but they need to be able to do it from their house. And to me, Whatnot has for artists, a lot of artists are using that, and I'm into it. I'd rather pay my money to a premium of, and you know, Kyle's prices are cheap and Rob's are not, but yeah, I would rather spend a little extra and save, you know, flying or spending 8 hours in a car. When I was young, I was down for that. I would travel across the country to go to a con, you know. I went to cons on buses and planes and road trips with buddies, but I don't want to do any of that now. I'm too old and too fat.
Yeah, I like it too because like I went on to like I'm not much onto Whatnot. I have the app. I do go on it sometimes, and I was on it when Kyle was on it sometimes, and I actually got Roscoe an art piece from him that was a print that he signed on the screen, and that he showed me signing it. I got it for Roscoe for his birthday, and also got myself a comic book. For those of you that don't know, Kyle Strom even writes books, and he wrote Unearth. And I read that and I liked it. So I got a copy of his Unearth #1 with the cover that he did.
Yeah, it was him, Baltimore, and somebody else involved in that? Was Cullen Bunn? No. Who else? Who's the third?
I feel like, yeah, because there was 2 writers.
Okay, Cullen.
I think it was Cullen Bunn.
Yep, because that's all Kansas City guys. When I moved here, the first weekend I was in Kansas City, I Googled comic book shops near me. The first one I was kind of like, wasn't very impressed by it. So I saw one that was further out, and I show up, and there's like people everywhere. I was like, what in the heck's going on here? Kyle, Cullen, and Baltimore are all in the shop. It was an Unearthed signing, and I just happened to walk in the middle of it. So that was like my first experience in Kansas City for the local comic book scene, which is great. I love it here.
So speaking of Kansas City, I know you're a fellow Chiefs fan. I don't watch Chiefs. I was brung into the family of being a Chiefs fan.
I think they were assigned to you.
Became a Chiefs fan.
Were the Chiefs assigned to you by Bobby?
Yeah,
was it Bobby or
Brother
Joe?
It was Bobby, and then Brother Joe kept sending stuff, and then Sugar Skulls, formerly Sister Joe, send me some Steelers stuff. So I'm like a Chiefs / Steelers fan.
Which is funny because that's my house. My wife is a Steelers fan. So yeah, you're in good company.
So let's talk, because you weren't always a Chiefs fan, where you kind of transitioned into being a Chiefs fan once you moved to Kansas City.
I was a mega college football fan. When I lived in Iowa, my wife and I had season tickets to the Iowa Hawkeyes. I still love the Hawks, so like that's my college team, but I just couldn't really get into pro sports as a kid. Like I was into the Chicago Bears, but Chicago was 3 hours away. I wasn't getting to games, and I'm more of a social sports guy. Like I want to be at the game. I'll watch it on TV, yeah, but to me, you really fall in love with something when you're at it. And I love that in-person experience. And now I live 15 to 20 minutes, depending on traffic, from the stadiums. So yeah, I love going to Chiefs games, and I go to Royals too. But I
see a lot of pictures on IG. You and your wife going to Chiefs games, so you're at the stadium quite a bit.
Yeah, we've gone to quite a few. We've even been fortunate enough to go to the playoffs a few times, and yeah, it's been great. I enjoy it thoroughly. Not as much as Brother Joe.
Or Bobby, but Brother Joe, yeah. Brother Joe especially, he loves to show off his Chiefs memorabilia.
Yeah, he lives in a gift shop.
He really does. He really does.
Like, if you look at it, it's like, are you in a Chiefs gift shop there, man? Oh, those guys are great, though. And that's one thing I've really liked since coming here is you really have, like, a local comic book community. In fact, this weekend, we have the Kansas City Comic Book Crawl on Saturday, where the local Kansas City comic collectors group on Facebook, which I'm a part of, so is Bobby, so is Marcus Circumstances. and every 2 hours we go to a different comic book shop through the metro and go on a tour, and there's giveaways at each shop, specials, sales, stuff like that.
Oh, I know Panda's in Kansas City too, isn't he?
No, he's in Wichita, which is about 3-ish hours away.
Okay.
That's further in the state. As I always say, you know, Wichita is actually a Native American word for trailer park, and that's where Panda lives, is out in Wichita. And then Family 54, he works in Topeka, which is about an hour and a half away, but he lives about 2.5 hours away.
Okay. That should be fun. That though, Saturday, of course, this is already passed while you guys are viewing this, so definitely go check out Beckerman's IG and see all the fun over there. And if you guys are in Kansas City, definitely hook up with Beckerman.
Yeah, my active IG. But I am going to make a more of an effort to put stuff on there. And I'm going to try to – I always say I'm going to film things I go to. I don't. I'm terrible.
I noticed your wall is bare. Like, I was hoping I'd see all these – everybody would see all these great art pieces because you were talking about art earlier in your collection and that.
I'm tearing the whole place down. If they want to see my if they want to see my art collection, a good place is Comic Viking, and look up the shorts. I do daily shorts of my comic book collection. I think we're on tomorrow will be part 30. By the time they see this, we'll be well into the 30s. I have enough that we will be going to about, I want to say it's like 242, but by the time I'm done, it'll probably be 260. So
the link to the Comic Viking channel is down below. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like the Comic Viking and you do a show together in that, and how did you guys come about like meeting? Like I love the story about people like meeting each other and becoming good friends enough to do like a YouTube show, because like that's what me and Roscoe do. We do, and we do shows together. Like people invite us on as a pair, and that, and I really like that. We have a camaraderie that you make best friends through this community, and it's fantastic. And you and Comic Viking seem to have that. Alan Rue.
Yep, Alan Rue, the Comic Viking. We are definitely a duo. So I found the community. This is going to be a long answer. I found the community by meeting Panda, who you just mentioned. I met him in a line at a Clayton Crane signing. I had been involved in YouTube a few years prior, but never having really met the cast of characters I know now. But I met Panda. I liked his vibe. He was telling me to sub up Steve. And then I kind of, Burke Family 54 Comics, I kind of forgot about it for a while. And then I had written it down, though, and I found my note when I was going through some stuff. And I was like, I'm going to go check this channel out. So this is probably 4 or 5 months after meeting those guys. And after a few months of lurking and watching, I actually caught a live as it was happening, and I started commenting, and I ended up backing the channel, getting put in one of those group chats on IG, met more people. Through him, I met Legion of Comics, started hanging out in his stuff. And around that time, Alan Rue, who knows Mark and Augusta, starts his own channel. And I started watching Alan's stuff. And I've always been drawn to people that are newer to the hobby because they have an enthusiasm that I really enjoy. Oftentimes, when you've had the same hobby for an extended period of time, you get stuck in ruts and routines and mindsets. And you kind of lose that passion for, continuing to get out there and hunt. Alan's definitely like, I'm a vampire, man. I'm getting that enthusiasm from him for the first time in years. I've been recently trading and I'm starting to zero in on like the books I still need that I want that are I thought were too high priced. I'm actually picking one up tomorrow that I never thought I would end up with, and it's like that now I'm back in it. You know what I mean? I caught his enthusiasm. And I just liked his style, and I reached out to him, and I had given him some feedback on some video he had posted because he had asked for feedback. And we got to talking back and forth, and he's like, would you like to come on my show with me? And I was like, sure. Next thing I know, we're just rolling the channel together. I have the keys to it, and I do lives when I feel like it. I can do whatever I want on there. Alan doesn't care.
That's the same with me and Roscoe. Like he can control my YouTube and go live on my YouTube channel, and I can go live on his YouTube channel because we share a StreamYard right now and stuff, and we control it together. And so that makes it easier, especially with between the lines. Like I can control the chat and stuff while he's drawing, and because before he used to say like, yeah, before it was hard to keep up with the chat because I'd be working on my drawing and stuff, and I wouldn't be able to highlight the chat or take questions from the chat as much as I'd want to. So
he and I had that conversation this morning about you and him.
He did say that you were talking to him. I don't know. It must have been over on Legion of Comics.
Yeah, it was backstage after the live was over.
Yeah, I seen him on there earlier today. Of course, guys, this is June 2nd that we're recording this. It'll be coming out the following Wednesday, just so nobody's confused. And that progresses. You meet a lot of great people in this community, and then you get to finally like meet them in person. Like I'll be going to meet Drac. Drac will be picking me up from the airport in August to go to like my first con, and it's a fan expo, but it's still kind of a con and stuff. And I get to meet Jeff Lemire. So Jeff Lemire will be there, so I'm super excited. Bringing my Animal Man #1, that's for sure.
You've got one up on me. I've never met Jeff Lemire.
Oh, I'm super excited. I'm going to bring Animal Man #1 and I think Swamp Thing Green Hell because I like both of those characters, and those are the two comics I'd rather. I have the Question, like the miniseries, the Black Label, the Question that he did as well. I was thinking that, but
that was great.
To Animal Man.
That was the one where they did like it was kind of like through the Question through the years. It like interwove into an Old West story, right? And maybe like a yeah, that's the one. It was like the
it was sent to me by John's Comics for Kids.
Have you read it?
So like I'm on. I got through issue 2, and that I'm gonna read more on it and stuff. I just got caught up on reading other things, but so we're excited to read more of it. John's Comics for Kids sent it to me.
Nice.
So, I was thinking that, but I think I loved Green Hell, and I loved Animal Man. Of course, I loved freaking Animal Man. That was like my introduction to Animal Man was through Jeff Lemire.
I'm currently paying off a page from Green Hell, making installment payments.
Oh, what page?
I'll send you a picture of it. It's from issue 1 because I don't know if you knew this, but halfway through issue 2 and all of issue 3 are digital. So
that's why it took so long and stuff.
Yeah, issue 1 was a complete book purchase by a friend of mine. I guess we can get into this too. So you've mentioned that I've got some pals in comic books. Well, one of the reasons that is a friend of mine is an artist rep. That's Ken Carson over at 4C Comics. He reps a lot of different artists, but he has relationships too. So Doug Mankey's rep is Johnny Bingo, which I'm probably one of the only people that are going to use that name. JJ is his name, but if he ever becomes a pro wrestler, it's going to be Johnny Bingo, and I will be his manager. And JJ reps Doug, and he reps Pat Gleason. And whenever they set up at cons, they always set up next to 4C. They're really good friends like that. And 4C Comics, they rep Bill Morrison, they rep Jim Shooter, Mike DiCarlo, Ron Wilson. Anyway, that's how I kind of got involved in that world. And then at a Kansas City Comic-Con 2 years ago, I actually worked their booth because they had a deal where they were they were the official host of John Romita Jr. at like 7 conventions that summer. So Ken needed more help in the booth, and I work cheap. Will work for art. So yeah, I worked his booth on that one, and I was Bill's handler for that show. I probably failed miserably.
Did he ever invite you back?
No, just because they don't. So I do their co-hosting duties on their YouTube show every Tuesday. They have different opportunities with various artists they have deals with and stuff. And they've got their road crew, but it's ever changing. So if Ken ever needs help, he knows he can call me, but more local to Kansas City. They will be at Heroes Con, though.
More locally close. That's fantastic. Like you mentioned Jeff Lemire. Is there any artist or writer that you absolutely would die to meet?
It's honestly, funny enough, man, it's Jeff Lemire. And it's at the point where I think like fate doesn't want me to meet him, because every time I'm supposed to, something happens. I saw him at Friday at a C2E2. His line was a little long, and I had stopped and talked to him briefly. Like I kind of met him, but I didn't get any books signed because he was shutting the line down. He's like, oh, I just need to go back to my hotel room and lay down for a little bit. I'll be back tomorrow. Turns out he got violently ill and he didn't come back, and I didn't get any books signed by him. So I should say I have met him, but I haven't got to like interact with him, buy anything from him, get anything signed. That was the closest I ever got. And then another show I went out of my way to go to meet him, and he ended up canceling the night before. So I will get you someday, Jeff Lemire. And
I'm hoping he doesn't cancel.
He snaked me on a page too, TM. I think I told you about this. I was very upset at the time. When Ken bought the entire book 1 for Green Earth from Doug, I had zeroed in on a page I wanted. You know that big splash page of Constantine at the end of issue 1? I wanted it. And I was going to work out an installment plan on it. And I was already talking to Ken on what he would charge me and like what kind of money down I would need. And then I got a phone call. Sorry, buddy. Jeff Lemire ended up asking Doug if he could have that page, and Doug sending it to him. So, Jeff, you've made an enemy. No, I love that guy's work. He's amazing. And I can see why you'd want that page, because that is a badass page.
I love that comic in general, like the story behind it and how he brought back Animal Woman, and that I didn't recognize her at first because, like, of course, like when she was in the Jeff Lemire run of Animal Man, she was like a little girl. She's 3 years old, red hair. She's like has black hair, and that sealed her, and she's way older now. So I was just happy to see that. That's probably why I'd want to get Green Hell signed, issue 1, just because it falls back in with what he did over in Animal Man.
Do you know the page where the trees all have faces?
Yes.
That's my page.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited about it.
So I was talking a little bit earlier about like meeting people and that and like how you Alan Rue and then you meet more people and stuff. You become really close with Marcus now. Circumstances, for those of you who don't know his real name, check him out on YouTube. Circumstances. Check him out on Instagram. He posts a lot of great things. But you guys have gone to like local wrestling matches together and gone hunting together and gone hang out together quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure Marcus regrets ever talking to me, but yes, we hang out, we go places, we go to wrestling. We're big supporters of Central States Wrestling, and we've been going for about a year now. We've gone comic hunting, we meet up with each other at cons, and again, it's not anything against collectors that have been doing it longer, but for me, it motivates me to get out there because if I didn't have Marcus, I don't know if I'd get out as much to go do those things because I'm not that compelled to do it anymore. Like my collection's big enough. I own a lot of comics. Most of my major runs are filled. Like there's not much in the dollar bins left for me to do. You know what I mean? My bin diving days are kind of limited, and it just takes a level of effort to go get out there and hunt and hit multiple shops. And Marcus still has that drive because he's trying to figure out what he wants to collect, and he's trying to get out there and find runs. He did that West Coast Avengers run. I loved watching that happen. I feed off that energy. I'm a vampire, man. Actual Dracula has nothing on me.
And that's another thing. You're a huge wrestling fan as well. Like I know I haven't watched wrestling since the 90s, but like I do appreciate it and stuff. We've gotten a lot of good actors from it, like John Cena, from wrestling. And I used to love it in the 90s, but not so much anymore. What drives you to going to watch wrestling nowadays?
So for me, wrestling has always been my number 2, maybe number 3 level interest. It's never been number 1. Nothing will replace comic books. But I think there's always been a natural link. But a lot of wrestling fans read comics and vice versa. Comic book people that watch wrestling. We're out there. And whenever you bring it up in a chat, you'll get the groaners that are like, oh, great, Becker's talking wrestling. But then there's people that also come alive in the chat that do watch it and follow it. And I think it's natural because both require a certain level of suspension of disbelief. Like the fact is you and I both know wrestling's a work, it's scripted. They know who's going to win. Some of the, depending on who it is, the punches don't land. It isn't, I don't want to say it's not real because you can get very real hurt in that business. It all hurts, but it's all predetermined and it's all fake, I guess, at the end of the day. It's a production. But what the scenes they're acting out is a battle of ultimately of good and evil. You know what I mean? You got your good guy, you got your bad guy, you got your storyline that's causing, drama. It's everything I love about comic books, but in a ring. Sorry, that's kind of a long answer, but then there's always there's a lot of wrestlers who draw their inspiration from comic books. In ECW, you had Hollywood Supernova wore a Green Lantern suit, Hurricane Helms, also inspired by Green Lantern, has wrestling tattoos. Raven, Helms, Raven, RVD, they've all written comic books. There's just a big connection between wrestling and comics, and there has been for a long time. Ric Flair has a comic book right now.
Now you just have wrestlers becoming superheroes from comics. As you had like John Cena became Peacemaker, and The Rock became Black Adam.
Yeah.
So it's And then, of course, Daniel Warren Johnson brought us do a power bomb. So.
And he was inspired by Japanese wrestling. He's an avid AEW watcher. When I met him, he was wearing an AEW hat and a hoodie. He, looked like one of the boys. There was something else. Oh, Seth Rollins is currently taking breaks from WWE in between shows to go down to Atlanta and film in Captain America 4.
Oh, shoot.
I don't know who he plays, but Seth Rollins is in it.
I can say I'm done with watching Marvel movies and that. Like, I'm not, but I think, like, I'm definitely going to be, I might not go to the theater to watch it, but I'm definitely going to watch Captain America 4 because I'm interested because they're bringing in characters from different franchises now and stuff. They're connecting it with, like, the Incredible Hulk from Edward Norton. They're connecting that more and more. They did that with a little bit of She-Hulk, but I think they're going to be doing it a lot more in Captain America 4.
I'm just so grateful they're making all these movies. I'm gonna keep watching them. They're not all my cup of tea, but I don't think there's a scenario where I won't watch something comic book related eventually. I still haven't finished the Miss Marvel series, but I'm going to at some point. That's the only one I'm behind on.
Since we're on the subject of movies, this is no spoilers, of course, but I want to hear your take on the Flash movie because you got an early viewing of the Flash.
I did. So a couple weeks ago, by the time it comes out, I'll have seen it roughly almost 4 weeks before its first release date. I was lucky enough to get a code from Marcus Circumstances to redeem with Warner Brothers to get a free advanced screening. I'd never been to one before. I have since gone to another one. And I'm going to keep going to these. These are fun. Basically, the Flash one you had to show up really early for, but most of them you don't need to. And you go in, there's no previews and there's no after credits. You just get a movie. And the agreement when you go in is that the ending you see might not be the ending that they go with in the end. And they ask that you fill out a response afterwards. And I gave them my impressions of the movie and everything. But yeah, I got to watch a free IMAX of Flash. I thought it was fun. So let's do a super non-spoilery breakdown. I don't like Ezra when he's trying to be funny or goofy. I don't care for his version of Barry Allen, but that's how DC has gone with Barry Allen now. A lot of Barry Allen tendencies are actually Wally West traits from the comic books. And I think we saw it happen with CW Flash. A lot of CW Flash storylines were Mark Waid, Wally West storylines. And brief thing about me, I am a huge fan of Mark Waid's run on Flash. It's a top 10 run for me in must-read material. And a lot of that stuff got pulled for the CW show. But that's not Barry Allen. And now again we have these versions of Barry Allen where he lacks all this confidence and he's kind of goofy and insecure. That's Wally West. That's not Barry Allen.
And he was always insecure because he was trying to live up to what Barry Allen was
right,
to him.
Right. He was a sidekick that had, after Crisis, was thrust into this huge role because, when your predecessor is basically DC's version of Jesus, how do you follow up with that? So, yeah. And Wally wasn't as powerful either in the beginning of that Flash series. I think he could run up to about 600, 700 miles an hour. And then by the end of it, he was essentially the living embodiment of the Speed Force. But before we get too derailed into that stuff, back to the movie. Yeah, there are parts there. Ezra Miller's just got a punchable face, doesn't he? Like, there's just something about him that I'm not a huge fan of. But when he's serious, I can deal with him. Like, he's palatable at that point. I'm probably one of the only. I know there's a lot of criticism of Batfleck, but I actually like Ben Affleck as Batman. I'm not one of those people.
Me too.
I think he does a tremendous job. I like our crew. I like our Justice League crew. I don't want to lose Gal Gadot. I don't want to lose Ben Affleck. But if that's the direction they go in, and again, I don't want to give spoilers away, so I'm trying to keep this really general. Flash was visually stunning. When they're not trying to be humorous, I think it's a really exciting action movie, superhero movie. Am I allowed to talk about? I mean, it's common knowledge Michael Keaton's in it. That's not a spoiler, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to it just for that fact.
That was amazing. His role to play in all of it was fabulous. Outstanding actor. Wasn't ever a Batman I was a huge fan of, but older Michael Keaton as a older Batman, I dig him. I didn't like and I can't say that because at the time I was a big fan of 1989 Batman. But the more I read of Batman, that movie developed problems for me. I just don't understand how you could devote your life to turning your body into a weapon and look like Michael Keaton did in that movie. You know what I mean? Say what you will about Christian Bale and his Batman voice. He looked like he had spent time training to be Batman. He looked like he could take somebody in a physical altercation. Michael Keaton, not so much.
And then you go further back and you go to the first Batman 66, you get Adam West, who definitely didn't look like
campy Batman. Yeah, those were fun though, and I watched that stuff as a kid, and that was just goofy fun, There's a scene I will never forget, and I can't tell you the episode name, but there's Batman and Robin take the Bat catapult to get downtown quicker, and the sound it makes, the twang sound, one of the goons that's pulling the caper downtown that they're about to burst in on from the sky hears the twang and he goes, "That sounds like the Bat catapult." Buddy, when you can identify the sound of the Bat catapult, it's time to hang up your goon hat because you need to get out of the game.
Yeah.
Your life of crime will not resort to anything, result in anything.
So overall, I also want to know, how was Supergirl in this, and that was she fantastic or did she need work? Would you like to see her come back as a character?
I would like to have seen more of her. I would watch more with her if they chose to go that route. See, now we're nearing into spoilers. Some of those guest appearances that you see in the movie, it made the moment for me. To this point, Flash is my superhero movie of the year, and I don't think I'm going to be alone in that. I think most people who watch this are going to walk away. Sure, there's things you could nitpick. There are issues with the movie, and for me, it mainly stems around this goofy Barry Allen problem we have. But there's just some people, when you watch them talk, they're just not for you. That's for me. When every time Ezra Miller opens his mouth, I'm just kind of like, boy, somebody really needs to punch you.
So people are saying that it's like the best superhero movie ever. Would you agree with that, or would you say that's kind of taken it a little bit too far?
Everybody's mileage is different. It's really good. and I'd be hard pressed to find a better DC movie. But for me, my favorite is always going to be, well, not always going to be. As of right now, my highest accolades goes to Winter Soldier, Captain America 2. I just think that was fantastic. Really well
it was done. Better than the first one. It was even better than the first one.
I would say it's the best Marvel has done with a movie. And I don't think they'll ever capture that lightning in a bottle again. Not with their current regime.
So out of 10, what would you give the Flash movie?
I gave it an 8.9, I believe. And
that's so good.
9.4 is what I've got Winter Soldier at. I don't do 10s. Because once you go 10, where do you go from there if something is ever better?
That is true. That is true. There is people that have given 10s. Like I know that there's I don't know if you're familiar with him. He jumps on other people's YouTubes quite a bit, and he has his own thing. He's avid in getting people to read comics, but Koi Jandro, he has not given a lot of movies 10 out of 10s, but I guess the Spider-Verse movie, he's given a 10 out of 10.
Once you give a 10, though, can you give another 10? Haven't you already said this movie's the pinnacle? So what, you've got multiple mountains? So, like, on his planet where he has mountains, he has 3 mountains that are the exact same height? Or is there an Everest? And I'm always quick to point out, under my scoring system, this is only for comic book related movies.
That's true. He's given 22, I guess. 22 movies in general, a 10 out of 10. So I'm not sure, like, because then at that point you can only give like one movie an 8 out of 5, 8.5 or something like that. So I guess you can give multiple movies 10s.
To me, like, so my scoring system is anything above a 6 is better than average, you know, like let's give a I had Black Adam as an 8.1 the first time I saw it, and I watched it 2 more times, and now it probably lives in the lower 7s for me, like a 7.4, 7.5. But that's good. That's a good movie. That does the job. You know, when you get into that 8s, that's when I'll rearrange a day to go see that movie or work that movie into my viewing schedule. And 9s are as good as it gets. And I only have 2 movies in the 9 range. I just heard a curious noise. I think my cat.
So to end
I have a cat that's destroying something right now.
Oh, shoot. Hopefully it's not the art. Save the art at all costs.
That's in here. Cat Murdoch is my cat, and he's a daredevil. I think he just might have pulled down some towels.
Oh, is the cat blind?
No, he's not. He's just the kitty without fear. But yeah, that's his legal name. Cat C-A-T-T Murdoch. That is his. That's his paper name.
That's fantastic. So to end this off, touch on New Warriors a little bit at the beginning and how you don't like change. But what drew you to those characters to begin with, and what fascinates you most about those characters, and why do you want to see them? If they were to come back, how would you like them to see them come back in comics?
Okay. What drew me to them is it was a number 1. It was a new team, something I could start fresh on. What kept me there was that they were teenagers like me that had problems, and they had bad beats. They went through trials and tribulations, and when you haven't read a lot of comics, there were storylines in there that I felt like I got super upset. One of my favorite early characters was Marvel Boy, Vance Astrovic, and he inadvertently kills his father and goes to prison. And then, later on in the series when they time travel, so his father was abusive, and this actually goes outside of this of the New Warriors. See, now you've opened up the dam, TM, because there were storylines Fabian put together from years back. Vance Astrovic is a mutant, but his mutant power occurred because there is a future version of himself named Vance Astro on the Guardians of the Galaxy from the 70s. Well, in a Defenders annual in late 70s, early 80s, Vance Astro tries to warn a younger version of himself to not go to space because he's not liking how his life has turned out. And when he does that, it accidentally triggers the kid's latent mutant abilities, which get him targeted. So if you go forward a few years, the Thing solo series where he meets Sharon Ventura and stuff, well, during that, the Thing joins a superhero pro wrestling federation that travels around with the carnival. And while he's on that, he encounters Vance Astrovic, who he recognizes from that earlier adventure with the Defenders, because the Fantastic Four crossed into that whole debacle. And it turns out Vance is getting hit by his dad for being a mutant. And he pals around with the Thing for a little bit, but ultimately Ben takes him back to New York and makes him, reconcile with his parents because he's only a 14, 15-year-old kid. A few years later of continuity time, but, fast forward to 1991, Marvel Boy's now on the New Warriors. His dad's still not cool with him using his mutant powers, and the hitting gets worse. And Marvel Boy starts showing up with, bruises and stuff, and they lose a pretty bad battle, and Marvel Boy gets really tuned up by Gideon, and he goes home with like a cast and like head wrappings and stuff, and his dad starts freaking out and hitting him harder and harder, and he has him down in a corner, and his mom tries to intervene, and he hits the mom, and Marvel Boy just lets loose with a telekinetic blast, and he kills his dad. And he gets charged for murder. His lawyer is Foggy Nelson. This is all I don't think people realize how good some of these New Warriors storylines were, but he refuses to hide behind a superhero, celebrity, and he demands to be judged and dealt with fairly. And he ends up being found guilty, and he goes to the vault, which is where dangerous superpowered beings go. And the New Warriors try to bust him out, and he says, "Nope, I'm going to prison." So he spends the next several issues, over a year of our time in prison, and it's great. It's so good. Between that and Namorita's terrible time as the leader of the New Warriors after Night Thrasher leaves on his own quest of vengeance, it's all just so good. I could spend hours talking about why I love the New Warriors and why that first run was so well done. It didn't end the best, but Fabian thought he was getting a second title, and he had prepared the team for a brand split, but he ended up not getting it, and it really cluttered up the issues there that were supposed to be the split. But it's such a good series, and just always will have a place in my heart. And I loved it as a kid. Those stories made a huge impression on me. And there were books I've loved more since, but that'll always be my first. And I collect a lot of New Warriors related art because I can, and it was affordable, and I enjoy it.
And how would you like to see them come back?
Well, we almost got a TV series a few years ago, and I'm still a little bitter. And then we almost got another comic book series, and Joe Rogan interfered with my life, and I will never listen to Joe Rogan speak again. That's how much I hate him. There was supposed to be a new Warrior series, and then Joe Rogan made fun of it, not understanding that Kibble Smith was using satire for the new. So during the Outlawed storyline that went through Champions, the new Warriors were supposed to come back as like coaches for the new generation. And then they were going to start a new Warriors team that came out of the pages of Outlawed. And the guy writing it, Kibble Smith, had come up with this new generation of new Warriors, you know, and the names were like Snowflake and Safe Space and stuff like that. But it was satire, guys. It was satire. And Joe Rogan got a hold of it and just tore it a new butthole on his stupid podcast. And because of that, I didn't get my 1 in 100 that I had available for pre-order. That was a Mark Bagley cover and is a gorgeous cover, and I want that book. And they didn't print it. COVID happened. Stupid Joe Rogan. And then the TV show was supposed to come out like a year or two before that, and that got canceled. And it was starring Squirrel Girl, and that was AT&T gal, the brown-haired gal from AT&T commercial. She was going to be Squirrel Girl and the leader of a new Warriors team. I've seen bits and pieces of the pilot. It probably wasn't going to
got a big break. Look what you did, Joe Rogan. Somebody needs to clip this out and like tag Joe Rogan, post it on their IGs, post it on their Twitter, and tag Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, see what you did. You made somebody that was very passionate about New Warriors and made fun of them. And who knows, maybe he'll see this and maybe he'll talk about us now.
Marvel gets to make hundreds of shitty books every year. I was asking for one, and you took it from me, Joe. You took it from me. Fuck Joe Rogan. Can I say that word on here?
You just did, so yeah. I'm not cutting it out. We'll leave it in. Leave it in.
That guy sucks.
Can we leave it in? Yeah, we can leave it in.
We got the approval? Thank goodness.
Yeah. We got the approval. So that being said, I think we'll end it on that. I think we'll end it on fuck you, Joe Rogan. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sticking around and talking a little bit about how you got into comic collecting, how you got into art, how you got into collecting art, how you met some amazing people in this community, and how you got to see an early version of The Flash, and how Joe Rogan ruined New Warriors for you.
Asshole. You better end this before I keep cursing.
All right. So, guys, you can find Beckermin over on his IG or at the Comic Viking on YouTube. The links to both of those are down below. Definitely go check it out. Check out what he has to offer for his shorts that he's been putting out. And are you and the Comic Viking going to you guys do a show together called
Weekly, the Book Club? Oh, we've been doing a monthly book club. It's on hiatus until Alan's done moving. But we'll be back in July.
Do you guys already have the book that you guys are going to be doing?
No, I haven't pushed Alan to do a lot of that stuff. The Hucklebuck right now, little insider info, we're pre-taped for still another like 4 weeks. Alan's got a lot going on in his life right now, so that's why I've been doing more stuff and trying to keep the channel going. As of this recording, we are at 299, so we might actually get to 300 by the time this happens. If not, if one of you doesn't follow Comic Viking, do me a solid. It'll really get me over my Joe Rogan rage.
Well, thank you so much. Guys, make sure to go follow Beckermin. Go sub up to the Comic Viking. Let's get him to 300. Let's get him to 325 after this video airs, and that this upcoming Wednesday. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you guys out there. And as always, my friends, stay freaking dirty.